Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. After being reborn, I turned down every single attempt Peter made to win me over. When he offered to take me home while I was burning with a fever, I didn't even think before turning around and running off. Before dawn, he had already made breakfast and was waiting for me downstairs, but I handed it all out to the other comrades. When he stubbornly tried to force the two of us together, I went straight to submit a discharge application. In my last life, I married a man who appeared to be the very picture of uprightness, Peter. He was so righteous, so good to everyone. Yet, I was the only one who had to swallow my grievances. This time, he can go on being that too nice guy by himself. I'm not playing along. Mom, stop staring, my younger son said impatiently. Today is Aunt Grace's 70th birthday. Dad's not coming back. Go to bed early. Yvonne and I are heading over. Big brother and third sister are already there. I'm going too. He took his wife by the hand and walked toward the door. Struggling, I pushed myself up and reached out to stop him, but the door closed, leaving me with his impatient look and the sound of his voice fading farther and farther away. So annoying, he muttered. Every time Aunt Grace wants us to keep Mom company, she stirs up some fuss. Today, she's even pretending to be seriously ill. Guess I'm the only fool. None of my brothers or sisters came back. Looks like they've already seen through her little tricks. My daughter-in-law tried to comfort him. Don't say that. Let's go. I heard Aunt Grace's son bought a villa and plans to move Dad in. I want to see what it looks like. I shut my eyes, drained of strength as hot tears slid from the corners of my eyes. My whole body felt like it was on fire. Maybe I really was going to die this time. Memories of my pitiful life kept flashing through my mind. Peter and I weren't matched by a go-between. It just happened. He was a platoon leader. I was in the performing arts troupe. He was quiet and sparing with words, looking every bit the decent man. So I married him. That was the beginning of a lifetime of sorrow. He was so upright that most of the 100 yuan monthly subsidy went to the poor soldiers under his command. I urged him to keep some for us. But he said, "If I don't look after my men, who will?" At the time, I thought, a man who cared so much for his subordinates must be a good man. So I allowed it. Then I got pregnant and couldn't perform anymore. I was left with only my basic salary, and life began to get hard. During the holidays, whenever there was rice or white flour to share, anyone who complained to him, even a little, got something from him. And he often came home empty-handed. I would wait for him with high hopes, only to be disappointed again and again. I wanted one bountiful new year, but instead we argued, and he decided I was unreasonable. After I gave birth to our first son, I began asking him for his wages every month. He thought I had changed too quickly and for the worse. But when our skinny little boy cried from hunger, I had no choice but to fight for what we needed. Maybe there was never much love between us to begin with, because what little we had soon existed in name only. He stopped coming home, preferring to sleep at the base. My mother-in-law forced him to come back. Later, we had more children. Maybe he realized how hard it was to raise them because he started leaving me half his wages each month. I was already grateful, and our life began to run more smoothly. But then fate stepped in again. The platoon leader I used to go on missions with never came back. Peter took it upon himself to look after the man's family, often helping for an entire day at a time. Gloria, a woman with 2 children, had lost the pillar of her family. I felt truly sorry for them until the day Peter brought them into our home. Gloria's husband was gone. Housing in the military district was tight, and she was about to be sent back to her hometown. Peter sat on the edge of the bed all night, unable to get past that hurdle in his heart. I told him not to overthink it. He had done all he could. I never imagined he would make such an unbelievable decision. Without telling anyone, Peter brought them home. Looking at our already crowded household, I snapped and fought him like a madwoman. There were already 6 of us crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment. Where on earth was there room for anyone else to live? That was the first time Peter ever hit me. His eyes were bloodshot as he slapped me hard across the face, then glared at me and walked away with Gloria. He carried her luggage, one shoulder supporting a child. while Gloria followed behind him with small, careful steps. They looked more like a family than he and I ever did. He had never once carried so much as a scallion for me, never put our children on his shoulders. He set up a home outside for Gloria, and from his monthly wages he gave me only a third. The rest went entirely to her and her children. For the sake of my kids, I endured, watching him rise higher and higher in rank. People even thought Gloria was his wife. I was forgotten by everyone. Even my children weren't close to me anymore, because Gloria would sew them new clothes and give them snacks. No one knew how hard I fought just to keep them alive. No one knew that I went hungry every day, surviving on cold water, or that I quarreled daily with the mess hall's cook just to steam one more corn bun for them. Whenever this happened, Gloria would appear in her clean, well-pressed clothes, speaking for me with a gentle tone, and everyone would praise her for being so gracious. I was like a rat in the gutter. Everyone forgot that the clean clothes on her back and the money in her hands should have been mine, including the man standing beside her, looking at me with impatience. Before I married Peter, I had been one of the leading performers in the cultural troupe, educated and well-spoken, but everyone's attention shifted toward Gloria. Later, Peter received an out-of-town post, and of course, he took Gloria and her children with him. I didn't even know they were gone until a month later. By then, I no longer had the strength or the time to cry. There were children to feed and school fees to pay. I had to survive. Years later, after I had worked myself to the bone, raising our children and seeing Peter's parents off, they came back. They appeared before me like a matched pair. In other people's eyes, Gloria was already the wife of a senior officer. Standing in the crowd, I caught Peter's faint glance in my direction, but there was no recognition in his eyes. Gloria recognized me. Her face showed a flicker of embarrassment as she tried to pull her arm back from Peter's, but he held on to her. Her cheeks flushed as she looked at me with what seemed like guilt. Everyone was saying how they had loved each other unchanged for 10 years. I slipped away quietly. It was better this way. Pretend we had never known each other. I thought the children were mine alone, but that was only my wishful thinking. The moment they heard Peter was back, they all ran to him. When Peter saw them in their worn-out clothes, he lashed out at me, accusing me of being too stingy to spend even a cent on them, and saying, "That's why they lived like this." He took all the children away. I cried and begged them not to leave, but Gloria shielded the kids, telling me I was scaring them. I fell to my knees, pleading with her not to take them. Peter shoved me away, brushing the dust from Gloria's skirt and telling her, "Don't get close to her. She's dirty. You're no match for her." Gloria frowned. "Peter, no. It's my fault. I've taken you from her for so many years. I know how bitter you felt." Peter looked at her seriously. "You've never taken me away from anyone. You always urged me to come back, but I didn't want to. Everything with Gloria is my fault. Don't feel guilty. From now on, I'll make it up to the kids." Gloria seemed to want to say more, but Peter led her away. My children followed them, leaving without the slightest hesitation, leaving me alone in the dilapidated house. Even now, when I'm about to die, they resent me for wasting their time. How laughable. I felt my body growing weaker and weaker. I might really be dying. And maybe that was for the best. Life was too bitter. I didn't want to go through it again. I sank into darkness. When I opened my eyes again, there was a sharp knocking at the door. "Emma, Emma, get up." The captain's voice was calling me, and I instinctively responded before my mind even caught up. My body moved first, slipping into freshly pressed clothes. I opened the door. The person standing there gave me a once-over and asked, "Why aren't you wearing a skirt?" What a rare opportunity this was supposed to be. Then I remembered. Today was the day the captain was taking us to meet the soldiers from the lower unit. It was at tonight's party that I had first met Peter in my previous life. The thought of the misery I'd endured back then drained all the color from my face. "I'm not going," I said flatly. "I don't feel well." The person in front of me frowned. "How can you suddenly not feel well? Can you still manage?" Maybe my face had gone too pale because he seemed to believe me. I remembered him. My good friend Zachary Chu. He was the only one who had ever told me not to marry Peter. He'd said that a man like that was the worst kind to build a life with. That if we ever argued, Everyone would take Peter's side. That face of his represents justice. Zach had said back then I didn't believe it. Now I did. Zach left, still not entirely convinced, and I leaned against the door, slowly sinking into a crouch. This time I absolutely could not marry Peter. I was still lost in thought when the captain came in exasperated and grabbed my arm to pull me toward the door. Emma, you have to go today. Last time you claimed you were sick, and you were the only one in the troop who didn't go. If you skip again, people will say you're stirring up class division. I knew the captain meant well. In my last life, I thought he was just a gun-wielding brute, someone I looked down on. But it had been him who fought for my basic salary, him who encouraged me to be strong. In the countless long nights that followed, it was that small income that kept me alive. The captain hurried ahead, but when he saw I wasn't speaking, he looked back and paused at the sight of my reddened eyes. Are you that upset you're crying? He loosened his grip, about to say something when a hearty voice rang out behind us. What's going on here? We turned to see a dark-skinned man approaching. Behind him was Peter. At this moment he was still young, his features sharp and his expression serious. My whole body started shaking, part anger, part fear. I wanted nothing more than to wrap my hands around his throat. My miserable life had been thanks to him. Peter, sensitive to others' gazes, looked up and met my eyes. Something clenched in his chest. Why did it feel like this woman wanted to kill him? The captain quickly stepped between us, blocking my trembling figure. We're just having a get-together, he said lightly. Emma here has a high fever and was crying, but she kept insisting on participating. He said that a performer is still a soldier, unafraid of hardship or fatigue. The company commander clapped his hands. Good comrade, but since your fever is so bad, never mind. Go back and rest. Peter, take her back. Peter straightened up instantly. Yes, sir. His voice was firm and loud. The captain understood right away. This was clearly someone the commander had his eye on. Well, he thought Emma might be picky, but she was hard-working and good-hearted. If the two of them could get along, that wouldn't be bad. With that in mind, the captain walked off with the commander. I stayed rooted to the spot as Peter stepped closer and closer, his shadow eventually covering me completely. I stared at it on the ground, a strange fear creeping over me. In my past life, Peter had arrived there much earlier. Why was it different this time? I didn't dare think any further. I turned and ran. Peter froze for a moment, then quickly followed. The closer his footsteps sounded behind me, the faster I ran. The uneven road nearly made me trip, and Peter called out, reaching for me. Every hair on my body stood on end. I would rather twist my ankle than let him touch me. I braced for the humiliation of falling flat on the ground, but in the next second, someone caught me around the waist. Opening my eyes, I saw a lazy, teasing face. Well now, Emma, he drawled. This time, you've thrown yourself right into my arms. Behind me, Peter's brow furrowed. Comrade, please watch your words. I saw with my own eyes that she was about to fall. It wasn't anything like what you just suggested. Such malicious language shouldn't be used toward a decent young woman. The man Jacob Shao yanked me behind him. And who the hell are you supposed to be? Peter, his expression deadly serious, stated his background and said, Please let go of this young lady. I had never heard Peter speak so many words at once, but it also reminded me to act. I quickly pulled my hand free from Jacob Zhao's grip, ignored them both, and limped away. My ankle was a little injured and I didn't want to see Peter, let alone Jacob. Because in my last life, the first time Peter brought Gloria and her children back, it had been Jacob who stepped in for me and punched Peter. But Gloria was the widow of a fallen soldier. And with that act, Jacob was doomed to be unable to stay in the army. He was discharged soon after, and I never heard from him again. When I reached the dorm entrance, a girl with a ponytail hopped over the railing toward me. My pupils widened instantly. It was Gloria. I hadn't realized we'd crossed paths this early in my last life. Gloria curled her lips at me, bumped my shoulder hard, and kept walking. She only got a few steps before someone grabbed her by the collar and yanked her back. What are you doing? Why are you putting your hands on people? Peter's voice was cold. Apologize. Gloria's eyes flicked to the soldier who had stopped her. He was still just an ordinary private then, All bluster and no rank. Fine, fine. I'll apologize, she muttered before darting away. Peter watched her back, his brow furrowed high. A rude woman like that was the kind he despised most. I could only find it laughable. Holding on to the railing, I climbed the stairs step by step, ignoring the hand Peter extended toward me, and shut the door without a word. I knew Peter too well. He had his principles. If he promised the company commander he would see me to my door, then he would. Funny how Peter could fulfill any promise he made to others. Yet the one promise he'd made to me, to treat me well, he tossed aside without a thought. Peter stood outside for a long time, wondering what he had done wrong, why I hated him so much, why I resisted him so strongly. With that thought, he returned to the company commander's side. The commander, grinning, said, "That girl's name is Emma Shen, one of the stars of the performance troupe." I asked around. "She might be picky, but she works hard. She'll stay up all night rehearsing a single dance. I think she'd suit you." Peter pictured my face in his mind, and without knowing why, didn't object. The commander chuckled knowingly. "I knew you had high standards. I've introduced you to so many women before, and you never agreed. Looks like you do have a thing for pretty girls." Peter's head shot up, his ears burning red. "Commander, it's not like that. I just think she's different." The commander gave him a look that said he understood perfectly. "Well, the troupe will be here for a few more days. You should go talk to her more. A good girl like that is in high demand." Peter neither agreed nor refused, but before dawn the next morning, he was already waiting downstairs. He didn't even know why. Every time he closed his eyes, my gaze from yesterday haunted him, keeping him restless through the night. So he came here to wait. When the bugle sounded for morning wake-up, I opened my eyes. Carrying my wash basin, I found Zachary Chu already waiting at my door, and we walked shoulder to shoulder toward the wash area. Zach chatted cheerfully about the fun things that had happened yesterday, but my mind wandered, my eyes drawn instead to the smiling faces around us. Since marrying Peter in my last life, I hadn't seen many of these people again. Zach suddenly nudged my arm, signaling for me to look outside. I turned my head and saw Peter. My eyes dropped immediately. Peter strode over, a lunchbox in hand. "Comrade Shen," he said, "I brought you breakfast." I stared at the lunchbox. This was the first time, past or present, that I had ever received a meal from Peter's own hands. In my previous life, I had lain alone in the hospital giving birth. I told him I was hungry and afraid I wouldn't have the strength to give birth. Peter told me to bear it, saying that soldiers endured much worse, and that I was being too delicate over something like childbirth. His words made me cry so hard I couldn't stop. Annoyed, he walked out and never came back. It wasn't until after I delivered the baby that he appeared, only glancing at me briefly before rushing off again, because one of his subordinates' wives was also about to give birth. The subordinate was away on a mission, and Peter busied himself taking care of her. I could barely form words by then. My baby had no milk, his face red from crying and hunger. It was only because a neighbor couldn't stand to watch that she stepped in and fed him some formula. But downstairs early that same morning, Peter had stood in line to buy formula for that subordinate's wife. The irony was bitter. I hadn't responded at all to Zachary Chu's chatter, so he gave me a light kick. I turned back with a cold face and said, "Thank you, Comrade Peter. I'm not hungry." Peter's grip on the lunchbox tightened slightly, as if uncertain what to do. "Comrade Shen, have I done something to offend you?" "No, we don't know each other." Peter had never encountered anything like this before. He had always treated people kindly. Thinking of that, he gave me a deep formal bow. I was so startled, I stepped back several paces. His expression stayed solemn. "I'm sorry, Comrade Shen. I don't know how I've offended you, but if I have, I apologize." I wanted nothing more than to avoid any further ties with him, so I shook my head repeatedly. "No, I just don't want to get married for the time being. I only want to focus on dancing." Peter pressed his lips together, clearly disappointed. He placed the lunchbox into my basin and walked away quickly. I hurried a few steps after him, but he only walked faster. I sighed helplessly. Zach came over, grinning as he teased, "When did you two meet?" How did I not know? I told him what had happened the day before, and we both brushed it off. But that evening, the captain came to find me, his face serious. "Emma, how could you let a soldier bow to you? You need to write a self-criticism and offer Comrade Peter a formal apology." I opened my mouth. It was him. The captain cut me off immediately. "Don't say anything. This caused a bad impression. The company commander came to me personally. There has to be an explanation." I bit my lip. I knew it. Getting involved with Peter would bring nothing good. Zach, still smiling, wrapped an arm around the captain's and said, "Captain, don't be so serious. This really isn't Emma's fault." Peter showed up first thing in the morning, bringing her breakfast and bowing to her. It startled even me. The captain's expression softened a little, but he didn't change his mind. Carrying my written self-criticism, I followed him to the military offices. Soldiers were training nonstop along the road. The captain knocked on a door and took me inside. Looking up, I saw Peter. The captain gave me a subtle look, and I stepped forward, bowed deeply and said, "I'm sorry, Comrade Peter." Peter waved his hands repeatedly, trying to help me up, but I stepped back to avoid his touch. Straightening, I began reading my self-criticism. When I finished, I took out ration tickets and the lunchbox, holding them out to him. "Comrade Peter, I didn't know where to find you, so I didn't return your lunchbox in time. That was my fault. I gave the food inside to others. And these are your ration tickets that I used without asking. I don't know why you bowed to me and apologized, but I'm returning these two things as a way to express my apology. I truly am sorry." Peter scratched his head awkwardly, clearly flustered. The captain cleared his throat, and I stood behind him. He addressed the company commander earnestly. "Emma is straightforward. Her mind is only on dancing. If there's been any misunderstanding, it's better to clear it up now." The commander's expression stiffened. His real intention had been for the captain to help push the two of us together. Once we were a couple, any misunderstanding would be irrelevant. Peter looked at me seriously, his tone tinged with disappointment. "Comrade Shen, is that really how you feel?" I nodded firmly. "I only want to dance." The light in Peter's eyes dimmed instantly. Walking out of the office building, the captain looked at my face. "Emma, since you have no interest in Peter, you should quickly find someone like-minded to marry." Just hearing the word marry filled me with fear. "Captain, I really don't want to get married," I said. He sighed. "It's not about whether you want to or not. Don't underestimate how stubborn people in higher positions can be. Most arranged pairings are forced together. From what I see, they've already set their sights on you." Every hair on my body stood on end. I walked back in a daze to find Zachary Chu waiting for me. "How did it go?" he asked. I threw myself into his arms and burst into tears. Why is my fate so miserable? If the company commander insists, not even you, let alone the captain, would have a reason to refuse. Once a performer reaches the right age, she either gets discharged or gets married. I have to choose one. And to everyone, discharge is the worst option. I thought about it all night. Even if I stopped dancing, I could not repeat the exhausting life of my past. So I submitted my discharge application. The captain stared at the paper in disbelief. "Is getting married really that hard? I'm not forcing you to marry right this instant." Choking back tears, I said, "I don't want to cause you trouble. I can't find the right person, and I don't want to marry anyone." He let out a heavy sigh. "Then what do you want?" "I have only one request, Captain. I want to perform on stage one last time. In my previous life, I'd left the stage far too abruptly. This time, I wanted a proper farewell." He didn't hesitate to agree. There was already an internal performance scheduled for that evening. I walked back happy until I saw a lively group of soldiers in front of me, all congratulating someone. In the middle stood Gloria, wearing a bright red outfit with 2 braids tied with red ribbons. Beside her, grinning shyly, was her husband, the platoon leader, who by this time next year would die in an accident. He was already a platoon leader now with different insignia on his shoulders. No wonder Gloria had sneered and called Peter a lowly private that day. Right now, Gloria was beaming sweetly, holding rock candy and handing it out to everyone. When she reached me, she gave a dismissive snort. The good-natured man gave me an awkward nod, but Gloria looked at me with open hostility before turning to him in a coquettish voice. I've been walking all day. My feet are sore. Help me. His ears flushed red as he supported her away, Gloria shooting me a proud, smug smile as they left. In that moment, I suddenly understood. Maybe in my last life, she didn't love Peter at all. She had simply figured out what kind of woman appealed to him. And by doing so, she'd gained countless benefits. A comfortable life, a happy home. My children were ordinary, unremarkable, while her 2 sons later became top leaders in the military district. Once I realized this, I didn't know whether Peter's fate was more pitiful or mine more laughable. I stopped thinking about it and that night danced my final performance with everything I had learned and endured over 2 lifetimes. I poured into it the bleakness and absurdity of my existence, my own ridiculousness and sorrow. When I collapsed to the floor like a dying swan at the end, I almost believed I had truly died. But the sound of applause snapped me back. I wiped away the tears at the corners of my eyes and stood. In the audience stood many people. The company commander, the battalion commander, every platoon leader, and countless soldiers. Their gazes were warm, their words direct. Comrade Shen, when you fell to the floor, I wanted to grab my rifle and gun down anyone who had ever hurt you. It made me feel awful inside. Zach's hands were red from clapping. The captain came forward and hugged me tightly, his eyes bloodshot. Peter was there too, his eyes glistening. The moment I fell, something in his chest had ached with indescribable sorrow, filling him with an almost violent urge to destroy anyone who had ever wronged me. A woman this precious, he thought, should be held in his hands and protected, so that she would never have to shed a single tear. Peter's resolve hardened. He lifted his foot to come toward me, but Jacob Shao got there first. He removed the insignia from his shoulder and handed it to me, his usual mischievous expression replaced with complete seriousness. Comrade Shen, I like you very much. I hope to get to know you with marriage as the goal. I swear on my military insignia. In our home, your word will be the law, and I will keep that promise as long as I'm not sent on a mission. All my time will be yours. Peter's expression darkened as he stared at me intently. His gaze unsettled me, and rattled by Jacob's sudden declaration, I blurted out, I don't want to have children. Kids, I'd rather not have them at all. That one sentence made everyone present frown. What kind of woman doesn't want children? What's the point of marrying her? Someone muttered. Even the captain tugged at my sleeve disapprovingly. Jacob only froze for a moment before saying, That's something I need to think about seriously. Comrade Shen, can you give me a day? I hadn't expected that answer, but I nodded. Either way, the paperwork would take a few days. The crowd dispersed. Peter tried to approach me, but the captain subtly blocked his path. He was angry too. Angry that such a promising comrade like me would choose to leave over something like this. But the company commander's backing for Peter was strong, and that made things complicated. Zachary Chu's face was cold as he stepped up to Peter. You're Peter, aren't you? Satisfied now? Emma meets you and suddenly she has to choose between getting involved with you or going home. We're performance soldiers. We may not be as great as you, risking our lives in battle, but we're still human. Do you have any idea how hard Emma's life has been? Her parents sold her. She was nearly beaten to death, and only after joining the troop did she finally get a few good days. Why do you people have to treat her like this? As Zach spoke, tears streamed down his cheeks, his voice trembling. I stood there like an outsider. That part of my past had long been buried in my memory. Thinking back, the reason I married Peter in my previous life was because I wanted a home of my own. I was like a charity case. No one stayed for me. No one cared about me. I thought marriage would mean someone to protect me. But in the end it was nothing but an illusion. When I returned to my room, I divided my unused belongings among my sisters in the troop. Their eyes brimmed with tears as we hugged each other tightly. Then the door suddenly burst open. Peter stood there breathing heavily, his eyes locked on me. He grabbed my arm and tried to pull me out. I jerked my arm free after several tries. Comrade Peter, what are you doing? Looking at me with all seriousness, he said, I'll marry you. Don't leave. I eyed him wearily. Peter gave a helpless smile. I'm not a bad person, Emma. Don't treat me like I'm your enemy. I like you. Really? From the first moment I saw you, I liked you. I don't know how things turned into this, but I swear I never meant to force you out. Maybe my approach was wrong. I thought you, like me, would follow the organization's arrangements as for how I split my monthly wages. I cut him off with a blunt question. How much do you make a month? And how do you spend it? Peter didn't understand why I was asking, but he answered honestly. When I was a platoon leader with the subsidy, I got 115 yuan a month. A few soldiers in my unit have very difficult family situations, so I give each family 20 yuan. That leaves me with 15, and I give it all to you. I looked straight at him. But I want to use the best face cream, wear the most fashionable clothes, make a new outfit every month. I want to eat meat regularly. Your 15 yuan won't be enough. Peter's already serious expression grew even more rigid. Face cream can be replaced with barrier cream. 2 cents a jar. Clothes can be worn again as long as they're not torn. As for meat, you can still have it once a month. I suddenly laughed out loud. My laughter left Peter completely baffled. It was a while before I looked at him again and said, I won't marry you. Everything I want I can have on my own. My discharge payout is enough for me to live comfortably for a year or two. But if I marry you, I'll have none of it. I'll have to wash your clothes, cook your meals, clean the house, serve you, and give you children. Peter, tell me, what exactly would I be getting out of marrying you? Peter was at a loss for words. In his mind, marriage was simple. You just lived life together. Marry a man, he thought, and you'll have clothes to wear, food to eat, and you won't starve. But I knew better. Marrying him might keep me alive, but it would never make me happy. I'm not stupid, so why would I marry? After saying that, I turned and walked away. Peter stood frozen in place. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. Every time he gave money to soldiers in need, they were always grateful, saying that whoever married him would live a blessed life. The next day, Jacob Xiao didn't come to see me, which didn't surprise me at all. To men like him, a wife who refused to have children was unthinkable. On the third day, the company commander called me in alone. Between the lines of his words, he was blaming me for leading Peter astray, saying he'd been distracted in training for the past 2 days. His once perfect marksmanship had started slipping. I wanted to curse. I wanted to flip the table, but I couldn't. Instead, I smiled and accepted the criticism. So once again, in front of everyone, I read out my previous self-criticism, bowed to Peter and said, I'm sorry, Comrade Peter. I've already submitted my discharge application. I truly have no way to continue interacting with you. I'm sorry. The company commander's face turned completely black. He told me to speak to Peter privately. Why should I meet him in private? Words can destroy reputations. If even 1 or 2 people with ill intent saw us and spread rumors, I'd have no way to clear my name. I'd be forced to marry Peter. In my past life, I might have fallen for that trap. In this one, never again. I didn't want to stand beside Peter for even a second. This time, there were few people standing on Peter's side. Anyone with eyes could see I wasn't the one at fault. And since I was already being forced to leave, I walked away without looking back. By the 5th day, my discharge paperwork had reached its final stage. The captain told me to think it over once more. I shook my head without hesitation. With no other choice, the captain stamped the papers and handed them to me. Take these to the logistics office to register. Once that's done, you can leave any time. I thanked him sincerely, not just for helping me in this life, but for all the ways he'd fought for me in the last one. Wait! A voice called from behind. I turned to see Jacob Xiao limping in, one hand clutching his backside, his face pale with pain. He dropped to his knees with a thud in front of me. I was so startled I stepped back, but he caught my hand and refused to let go. Emma, you heartless woman. I nearly got beaten to death for you. And now you're leaving. I glanced at the cold sweat dripping down his temples, and couldn't bring myself to shake him off. What happened to you? Instead of answering, he asked, Does what you said last time still count? That if I agreed to no kids, we'd get married. It counts. But I never said I'd marry you. I only said, I don't care. Jacob interrupted, shaking his head fiercely. My parents have already accepted that they won't have grandkids. Now you have to marry me. The captain strode over in a few quick steps. Are you serious? Jacob gritted his teeth. The injury on my backside is still fresh. If I hadn't heard that this heartless woman was trying to run off, I'd still be in bed for another 3 days. The captain's eyes lit up. He snatched the discharge papers from my hands and tore them into shreds. Good. I approve of this match. Jacob, write the application and I'll get it stamped for you. Jacob, trembling slightly, pulled a form from his pocket, already filled out with his details, just waiting for mine. The captain, beaming, took it from him and pushed it toward me. Hurry up and fill it in. I hesitated. I hadn't exactly planned on jumping into another pit. The captain clicked his tongue. This application's been filled out for 6 months already. Jacob, you've been plotting this for a while, haven't you? I looked down at the date. Sure enough, it was long ago. Jacob covered his face sheepishly. That was love at first sight, but Emma said she hated sweet talkers and liked the quiet type. I lifted my head. Well, now I don't. Jacob's eyes lit up instantly. Then you like me? I'm number 1 when it comes to sweet talk. The captain burst out laughing. All right then, Emma. No kids means you can keep dancing forever. I really hate to see you go, but don't worry. Your spot here will always be yours. You were born for the stage. With the captain's persuasion, I filled it in after all. The captain walked off happily with the form while Jacob's grin curved his eyes into crescents. To my own surprise, my mood lifted a little. Seeing me smile, Jacob said cheerfully, Emma, I like the way you shine on stage. Even if you marry me, I'll never make you give it up. Everything at home will be taken care of by me, Jacob said. If I'm sent on a mission, my mom will come help you. Don't worry, she'll take care of things and then leave. She definitely won't bother you. My mom's the considerate type. Who talks about their own mother like that? But Jacob didn't think anything of it. My mom's very open-minded. You'll understand when you meet her, but right now you need to help me up. I can't get up on my own. I quickly stepped forward to help him. The process of getting up had him gritting his teeth and wincing. One hand pressed against his injured backside as he let out a dramatic groan. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. Supporting him, I helped Jacob out of the compound. A military Buick was waiting at the gate. The moment they saw Jacob, someone rushed to open the door. He still wouldn't let go of my hand. No time like the present. Come home with me today and meet my parents. I glanced down at my clothes. Far too casual. At the very least, I should be properly dressed for something like that. But Jacob kept tugging me toward the car. Emma, he began. But before he could finish, someone rushed in, shoving him aside and yanking me behind them. Jacob cried out in pain, the sound sharp and pitiful. His bodyguards hurried to steady him, and I saw that blood had already seeped through his pants. I shook off Peter's hand and ran to Jacob's side. Are you okay? Peter frowned, trying to pull me back. I didn't even use any force. He's faking it. Emma, Peter said, his voice urgent. Your captain told me you're getting married. You've already filed the report. I turned to him impatiently, only to see him looking as if he'd been dealt a heavy blow. How can you be so impulsive? This is the kind of decision that affects your whole life. I let out a mocking laugh. In my last life, he had rushed to marry me in less than 5 days. Why wasn't that impulsive? Peter's eyes were intense. I've thought it over. You're right. I shouldn't have been so concerned about other people's families that I forgot my own. From now on, all my subsidies will go to you. If you marry me, you'll only need to have 1 child. I have no bad habits, no shady connections. I'm completely clean. Jacob let out a snort. And who isn't clean? I'm clean too. Peter's gaze sharpened on Jacob. I'm talking to Emma. Jacob tugged at my sleeve. You promised me you're not going to back out, right? His eyes were full of nervous uncertainty. I clasped his hand and looked at Peter. If I marry him, I won't have to scrimp on anything. Then I got into the car with Jacob. Before the door closed, I looked at Peter again. You shouldn't approach any other women for now. Peter's eyes lit up. I gave him a small smile. Even if you meet someone, it'll be a doomed fate. I can already see that next year you'll meet the one who's truly right for you. The car drove far from the compound. Jacob leaned in. You can read fortunes too? I shook my head with a faint smile, then told the driver to stop at a bus company store so I could buy a few things before we continued on. Soon, we entered a military residential compound filled with 3-story Western-style houses, the kind only higher-ranking officers could live in. Following Jacob inside, I saw a plump, middle-aged woman in a blue jacket carrying a basket walking out. When she spotted Jacob, she turned and shouted inside, "Madam, young master is back." Jacob groaned. "Didn't I tell you not to call me young master?" The woman tapped her own lips. Right. Not young master. Young mistress brought Mr. Zhao back." Jacob rolled his eyes so hard they nearly stuck. I pressed my lips together to stifle a laugh. Then a woman in a dark navy dress embroidered with magnolias walked out. I straightened up a little and nodded politely. Mrs. Zhao looked me up and down, then said, "You are pretty enough. I'll give you that. I can't believe you'd actually take a liking to Jacob. Your tastes are certainly unique." "Mom," Jacob barked. Mrs. Zhao patted her chest. "What are you yelling for? You scared me. Come inside. I want to have a little chat with my daughter-in-law." Once inside, I set the things I'd brought on the table and pulled out a teal silk scarf with gold trim. In my hands, it quickly became a rose. I helped Mrs. Zhao put it on, and her eyes lit up instantly. She hurried to get a mirror, turning her head this way and that, then took me upstairs to see which of her outfits it would match best. In my previous life, I'd bought the exact same scarf for Peter's mother, but she had complained that I was wasting money and told me that once I was married, I shouldn't buy useless things like that. Mrs. Zhao, on the other hand, asked me how I'd made the rose and said she wanted to learn. The Zhao family turned out to be much easier to get along with than I'd imagined. They spoke with tact and never once brought up the subject of having children. After dinner, Mrs. Zhao helped Auntie Jin wash the dishes, but firmly refused to let me touch anything. She even sliced fruit and brewed flower tea for me. Suddenly, I remembered the first time I'd visited Peter's home in my past life. Peter's mother had wanted to see my skills and immediately tied an apron around me, telling me to start cooking. When I was done, she didn't let me sit at the table. She said women should eat in the kitchen. That day, I ate alone in the kitchen while the family chatted in the dining room, sometimes calling me over to refill a dish or fetch something. By the time I'd finished serving them, the food in the kitchen was stone cold. When everyone was done, they all sat back and waited for me to clear the table and wash the dishes. Peter's mother stood over me, nitpicking that I wasn't washing them clean enough. When I was finally done, everyone was already asleep. I fumbled in the dark back to the bedroom and nearly tripped. Peter's mother didn't allow candles, saying it was wasteful and that I was being spoiled. I stumbled my way back to bed, and Peter was already asleep. That was the first time I felt truly disappointed in him. Later, I told myself that everyone lived like this, but I still wondered if I had been brave enough to leave right then. Would I have spared myself all the pain that came after? Mrs. Zhou patted my shoulder, pulling me from my thoughts. "With this tea we could talk for hours," she said. And we did. So long that I lost track of time. When the sky began to darken, I said I should be going. Mrs. Zhao told her driver to escort me back and reminded me not to go out tomorrow as she wanted to visit me. I nodded obediently. She stood at the doorway watching me leave. My good mood vanished the moment I saw Peter. I didn't understand. Didn't he have anything else to do? In my past life, he'd barely made time even to get married, always claiming this friend needed help or that person had some hardship. Peter stood ramrod straight like a steel rifle. "Comrade Shun." I lowered my head and walked forward, but he stepped into my path, looking directly at me. His voice was cold and hard enough to make me shiver. I raised my eyes to meet his and saw nothing but pain there. "Comrade Shen, I've been an award-winning marksman every year with an excellent reputation. Why can't you consider me?" I had never seen Peter look this way, pained, humiliated. I found it absurdly funny and actually laughed. "Peter, you're truly disgusting." His face stiffened, darkening with anger. I didn't care and went on. "You've known all along that I applied for discharge, right? And you didn't say a word. But the moment I talk about marrying someone else, you act like this. Admit it. You're just a selfish, narrow-minded man. In your mind, Not marrying you and leaving the unit is a punishment you've already decided I deserve. Me marrying someone else goes against your will, so you keep pestering me. Deep down, all you care about is obedience. You want a wife who stands out, a spotless reputation, and the moral high ground all at once. You want everything. So, Peter, you're the one who's truly calculating here. His expression turned completely dark. I pushed past him and left. I didn't know when he walked away, and I didn't care. The next morning, Mrs. Zhao came at noon. I was an orphan, so the captain acted as my elder. Mrs. Zhao's sincerity was unmistakable. She gave a bride price of 580 yuan, the highest I had ever heard of. In the army, once the marriage report is approved, you're considered husband and wife. After getting the certificate with Jacob and holding the banquet, we went over to greet the company commander's table. He praised us as a match made in heaven, and Mr. and Mrs. Zhao nodded in satisfaction. Nearby, Peter's face was stiff, his lips unable to curve into even a polite smile, his eyes full of sorrow. When the guests dispersed, Jacob and I went upstairs. Every detail in the room showed careful preparation. Jacob lifted the quilt, and it was sprinkled with expensive decorative items. I took a basin ready to collect them, but Jacob told me to sit and wait. He took the basin himself, put everything away, and then neatly remade the bed. Watching him work so deftly, I couldn't help but recall my wedding night in my past life. Peter, reeking of alcohol, had vomited all over the floor. I had cleaned and scrubbed until late into the night, exhausted, only to be pushed down the moment I lay on the bed. He hadn't cared that the bed was covered in small decorative stones his mother had spread for good luck and appearance's sake. The thick quilt the art troupe had given me was taken away, leaving only a thin one. That night, I ached all over and felt so uncomfortable that I cried several times. When Peter finally rolled off me and fell asleep, I dragged my trembling legs to wash up. By the time I finished, dawn was breaking. Then his mother banged on the door, demanding I make breakfast with my own hands. Thinking of that and then looking now at Jacob, freshly washed, hair still dripping, handing me a set of the latest high-end pajamas from a department store that required foreign exchange coupons, I couldn't help but sigh at how different people could be. I took the clothes. You prepared these? Jacob's face flushed. Gone was his usual roguish air. I thought you'd like them. I smiled. I liked them very much. After I washed up, I turned off the light myself. If we were going to do this, better to get it over with early, so we could sleep. But unlike my past life, Jacob was attentive and gentle. At the slightest frown from me, he would pause to ask. In the end, I shut him up with a kiss. I didn't even know when I fell asleep. When I woke, I felt clean and comfortable. Jacob was gone, and beside my pillow was a fresh set of clothes. I hurried to get dressed. New brides are expected to make the first meal in their husband's home. But as I came downstairs, I saw Mrs. Zhao chatting with a well-dressed lady of uncertain age. Spotting me, Mrs. Zhao waved. Emma's awake. Breakfast is still hot. She pulled me to sit on the sofa. When I saw the lady's face clearly, I froze. I remembered in my past life, I often took odd jobs outside, and once on my way home, I had found her collapsed in the snow, likely from low blood sugar. I carried her home, and when she woke, she asked where I lived, my name, and who my husband was. I had only said Peter, before hurrying off. I still had to cook. Not long after that, Peter had been promoted. The lady smiled. Do you know me? I quickly shook my head. At lunch, she worried I might be hungry and urged me to eat more. Then she said she wanted to come watch my performance. Standing on stage, I didn't need to compare myself to anyone. I knew I was the brightest there. In the blink of an eye, a year passed. My life had been so full and happy that I hardly thought about the past anymore. One day, Jacob came home and said he needed to make a donation, asking me for some money. That was when I learned that Grace's husband had died and all platoon leaders and above were contributing. I gave him 2 large denomination bills, but Jacob frowned. That's too much. My rank's not high. Giving too much draws attention. 1 bill is enough. Use the other to buy yourself something you want. I smiled. Jacob always gave me all his money, even letting me withdraw it for him. And Mrs. Zhao fully supported this. Sometimes she would give me extra money herself or take me out. When we returned from one such outing, Jacob held me close and told me the full story. Because of Peter's misjudgment, that man had died. Out of guilt, Peter had taken Grace and her child into his home. Peter still hadn't married, so bringing Grace and her child home didn't cause a public uproar. I was momentarily dazed. Was this the reason why in my past life Peter had spent so many sleepless nights? If it was, then why hadn't he told me? Grace stood stiffly at the doorway. Peter looked at the dark, empty room and suddenly felt that it shouldn't be like this. In his mind, the air should always carry the smell of home-cooked meals and the laughter of children, even if the space was cramped. It should be spotless with a gentle woman there to ask after him. It was strange even to him, but he believed this was how it should be. Grace tugged on his sleeve, snapping him out of his thoughts, and he let them in. News of Peter's kindness spread quickly and reached his mother, who considered him the most capable of men, able to marry even a commander's daughter. How could she let a widow hold him back? Mrs. Peter tidied up her own things and moved in as well. The Peter household soon became a noisy mess. Grace told everyone how pitiful her life was, how Peter's mother treated her harshly, and only kept her for her pension. Peter was driven to the brink, avoiding home and sleeping at the barracks every day. What was once praised as a virtuous act quickly became a laughingstock. One day while I was passing through the base to see Jacob, Grace came out with her 2 children trying to leave. Peter, his face red with frustration, blocked her. Gone was the calm she'd shown in my previous life. She pointed a finger at his nose, her voice sharp. In the morning, I make breakfast for your mother. Either it's too hot or she says I can't run a household. At night, I fetch her water, wash her feet, and wait on her when she gets up. I even scrub her chamber pot. I've never complained, but living costs money. You give all your wages to others, leaving only 15 for yourself, and your mother takes that too. Other people need help. Fine, but I don't need help. You promised to take care of me and my children. Is this what you call taking care of us? Using my pension to feed your whole family? Cold sweat broke out on Peter's forehead. He had never thought of it that way. He quickly retorted, I make over 100 a month. How would I need you to support me? Grace let out a mocking laugh. And you're not ashamed to say that. You have 5 soldiers under you whose families are struggling. You give each household 20, leaving 15 for yourself. Your mother takes that too. My son needs to go to school. Your mother needs her meat. And I've worn the same set of clothes for a year without daring to let it tear. There's not even a scrap of cloth for a patch. Peter's face turned cold. Don't you have any compassion? Your ideological awareness is far too low. How are you worthy of being a soldier's wife? He had said the same thing to me once. Back then Grace had replied, Emma, you're wrong to think like that. I may not be educated, but I have love. I have mutual help. And I have awareness. You can't be too selfish. Peter had looked at her then as if she were noble, and looked at me as though I were trash. But now Grace bit back. Fine, give me the money and I'll feed your mother meat at every meal. Can ideology fill my stomach? Will my son stop going hungry because of it? Let's live first and then talk about ideals. The 2 of them were still arguing when Peter noticed me. He froze slightly, his eyes holding regret and a hint of longing. If he had married me, he thought, with my sense of duty and understanding, things would never have turned out like this. I might even have supported and encouraged him. I didn't even bother to glance back before walking away. The quarrel blew up into a scandal. Eventually, the company commander decided there would be no more private aid. Grace and Peter's mother were to split the money evenly, but the families of the soldiers who had always received help were outraged. 20 yuan was no small sum, and now it was gone. They refused to accept it quietly. The dispute grew bigger until tempers flared, and both family members and soldiers were sent home for discharge. From then on, private assistance was forbidden, cutting off support for soldiers who truly needed it. Peter's reputation was ruined. He couldn't lift his head in public, and no one spoke to him. His chances of promotion were gone forever. When Jacob was sent on assignment, Peter was still just a low-ranking platoon leader. I packed a small bag, and Mrs. Zio followed behind me worried. Emma, don't go. You've just gotten pregnant. It's not stable yet. Jacob said, "If you're not going, then I won't go either. Let's both just stay." I reassured them that I was in good health, told them not to worry, and turned, only to see Peter standing by the roadside, his posture still straight as a rifle. Jacob's brows furrowed tightly. Peter walked up in a few quick strides. "Emma, can I speak with you for a moment?" he asked. I often went out to help with things, sometimes gone for an entire day. But this time Peter seemed a little uneasy. "You're pregnant," he said. I nodded. "I want to have a child just like Jacob." "It seems you're doing very well," he replied. I nodded again. Peter drew in a deep breath. "I had a dream. In it, we got married. Later, because of all kinds of misunderstandings, I stayed with Grace. Then you died. Once I was of no use anymore. Grace and her son had already climbed to the peak of power, and I was thrown out. Our child's job was taken away, and we lived a miserable life." As he spoke, Peter studied my expression closely. "Emma, you should have married me, right?" I shook my head. "No, Peter. From the very first moment I saw you, I disliked you. Deep down, I despised you. If marrying you were my only choice, I'd rather leave the army." Peter's face fell with disappointment, but he still muttered, "I just feel like something's wrong. I should be the one rising higher and higher." I didn't bother listening any further. I turned and walked back toward Jacob, who was watching Peter wearily. Under his breath he cursed, "Nutcase." For the past 2 days, Peter had been acting strangely, asking if Jacob knew whether there would be a red hat next summer. He's not a fortune teller. How could he possibly know? My heart sank. Peter hadn't come to confirm a dream with me. He was testing to see if I had been reborn too. When I looked back, Peter was already gone. I exhaled slowly. My life now was good, and I was determined never to repeat the past. Later, Peter kept racking up military achievements, all in hopes of starting over. Grace sent him away, then promptly turned around and reported him. Whatever he had been involved in might have been forced by Grace, but she had overheard too much. The day Peter was imprisoned, Jacob received another promotion. I sat below the stage with our twin sons in my arms, watching Jacob's father personally attach the new insignia to his shoulders. The boys clapped their little hands red and kept shouting, "Daddy's the best." I smiled as I looked at Jacob. I loved him, but I didn't lean on him entirely. That I thought was the best kind of marriage.